What is going on, everybody? It is LuckyFinGaming here, and welcome back to For Honor, where we are finally getting to the much requested Knights tier list. Now, I do apologize. I know this one has taken a minute. There's a lot of there's a lot of Knights to go through, and I really wanted to make sure I got this one as close to the money as I possibly could. The Knights are a very diverse faction with multiple of them carrying armor sets from different eras beyond the medieval period. So I did a lot of research. I revamped this list. I must have revamped it at least 20 or 30 times. Just rethinking who I wanted where, giving closer looks to each of the characters. So here we are finally at the Knights tier list, and I hope you all enjoy, and hopefully I'll get it to everybody's satisfaction. So please enjoy. Alright guys, and starting off with Gladiator, I'm sure to nobody's surprise, but for more reasons than you may initially think. But to start off with, we can see that he is severely under-armored. He's got no chest piece. He's really got no leg armor except in his shins there. He's got a small shield called a buckler, which is a pretty common medieval carry shield. But then he's got a good helmet. That is one thing that I could definitely praise out of him. But then also a trident. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But the trident is actually a pretty bad weapon. So yeah, we'll talk about that here more in just a moment. But yeah, starting off, definitely the Gladiator. Alright guys, and so interesting thing about Gladiator, as I said at the beginning of the video, he's one of those that has a kit that is not necessarily from the medieval period. He's actually got one from what I believe is called the Bronze period. That would be a Greek-styled kit. And I'm not really sure why he chose to do this, and furthermore, why he chose to have a gladiator look to him. But as I was saying about the trident, the trident would actually be a pretty bad weapon. Now, I think the idea of the trident comes from the thought that, well, what would a farmer going to battle use? Well, he might use a pitchfork. So what's better than a pitchfork? Well, a big metal pitchfork. Well, a pitchfork is actually a weapon of convenience, not a war. So a trident would not be good, because I think about it, it's hard enough to get a single point through good armor. Now, imagine if you try to do that with 2 other points. It's just not going to work out. It's really not going to go in your favor. So overall, Gladiator, the rest of his kit is pretty bad. The only thing I can really praise is his helmet, his Hoplon shield. Not a very good one. I mean, if you're going into battle, you're probably going to want a bigger shield. So that's really all I have to say about Gladiator. Like I said, just generally, shirtless, little armor, and a pretty bad weapon kit to go with it. So let's move on to the next. Alright guys, and in the number 8 slot we have the Peacekeeper. Now this one may surprise a few of you, but if you look closely you'll see that she doesn't really have a whole lot of armor. She's got some mediocre arm bracers, and then a shoulder piece, and then a face mask. And if you've been watching this series all the way through, then you know how I feel about face masks. She does have a longsword and a dagger. Now, despite what For Honor says, that is a longsword right there, and some of the other characters have a greatsword. We'll discuss the differences as time goes on. But yeah, definitely in the number 8 slot we have Peacekeeper. Alright guys, so as I was saying about Peacekeeper, again, everybody knows how I feel about face masks, and I took multiple looks at her kit, and it doesn't look like she's got any kind of helmet behind that face mask. So really, as always, she's going to get butted in the face, or somebody's going to hit her in the face, and the mask is not going to have any kind of stoppage except for, obviously her face, her nose, or whatever, and they're going to break her nose or whatnot. Then, of course, as I said, she's got very little armor. Despite how it looks, she has very little armor. The only thing I can really praise is her fighting style is a very fast-paced. Kind of looks like it focuses mostly on hurting her opponent rather than actually just going straight out for the kill. But yeah, there's really not a whole lot I could say about Peacekeeper. Just that she's poorly armored and she could be better. But yeah. really, let's move on to the next. Alright guys, and then just barely in the number 7 slot we have the Gryphon. Now there's actually quite a bit to cover here, so one of the first things I want to note on is his weapon. Now this is a very odd weapon. It does seem like it would be very awkward, and I'm unsure as to the historical prevalence of this weapon. I've done some research on it. We'll have to talk about it here more in just a minute. But the next thing I want to talk about is the very odd combination of chainmail and scale armor. We'll have to talk about that once again more here in just a moment, but it's very interesting to see these two things paired as they are similar in many ways. But otherwise, we can tell some of the blatant flaws in Gryphon here. No leg protection at all. And then, of course, no helmet. We all know how dangerous not wearing a helmet of any kind is. So he barely is reaching the number 7 spot. Just barely coming in under our next character. But yeah, Gryphon at number 7 here. Alright guys, so as I was saying about his weapon, it's an actually interesting weapon to see because it's called a bardiche. It's kind of what happens when you make a Dane axe from the Viking period and add it to a Sparth axe, and then it kind of gets made. It's kind of a Frankenstein because then you add in a late medieval poleaxe, and you have this weapon called a bardiche. But as I said, it really didn't have a whole lot of prevalence in the medieval period because it came in at the very late end of the medieval period, just before the colonial period. And I'm sure most of us know what the colonial period means. Guns. Guns would have definitely outdone this. But it is interesting to see him wield a weapon like the bardiche here, and while still having scale armor from the early portion of the medieval period before plate armor was really prevalent. And that's just another thing. It's not necessarily that scale armor is bad, it's just that plate armor would be better. And it's very interesting to see him having chainmail and scale mail or scale armor together. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Gryphon, so let's move on to the next. Alright guys, and then at number 6, again, just barely topping out over Gryphon. It's really one way or the other. We have the Conqueror. Now, the Conqueror has upsides and downsides to his kit here. So let's start with the downsides. It doesn't appear like he's got any chest or back armor. So any kind of thrust would definitely kill him. However, the upsides really do kind of cover him up for that. The first thing being his shield. He's got a shield there, a good heater shield, which will cover the majority of his chest. So it's good to see a character with a shield there. You guys all know that I've been asking for, every time it feels like I'm saying, well, this character needs a shield. Well, now we have a character with a shield. And then, of course, the helmet. The helmet is definitely going to keep him protected in his head. However, the helmet it could be better. We'll talk about the differences here in just a moment, but just know that his helmet leaves some things to be desired. And then there is one last thing that is definitely a negative. Actually, I would say there's two more things that there's a negative about. Number one, he's not wearing a whole lot of forearm armor, which would definitely suck because I mean, that's the part that's being thrown out, so that's going to be the part that you want to keep protected. And then of course there is the medieval flail. A pretty bad weapon, but we'll talk about that more here in just a moment. Like I said, though, he just barely tops off Gryphon, mostly because of the helmet and the shield. But yeah, the Conqueror. Alright guys, I hope you guys don't mind me using my Rep 10 Conqueror here, but as I was saying about the medieval flail, I've really covered most of everything, so I just want to briefly talk about the flail. Now, funny enough, one of my friends, Otter, we were early in my gameplay when I first started playing Conqueror. I was joking with my friend JG about Conqueror's flail, and we were talking about how bad it would be in real life, and Otter, he asked a question. He said, may I ask why that would be such a bad weapon? And JG and I just kind of said the simple fact. Think about it. It's a spiky ball at the end of a very uncontrollable chain. Now, it has its upsides and its downsides, but from what I understand, the reality of a flail is really it would be more of a cavalry weapon than it would be a infantry weapon. So it's kind of more of a weapon that you ride in on a horse and you whip people with it as you ride along. It gives you a little better range, and just with the way physics works and everything, it could really increase the damage that the ball at the end of the chain would do. But in reality, if it was an infantry weapon, it's not one that you want to get into close combat with, because there's a high chance it's going to come back and it's going to hit you. And obviously you can imagine how horribly bad that would be. But then I want to briefly talk about helmet differences. Now, interestingly, you see me have in here on my Rep 10 Conqueror, I have a more round top helmet on my character here, and that's for a reason. I love to make my characters be as armored and as well kitted as they possibly can be, and that is one thing. A round top helmet is going to be better at deflecting or seeing hits slide off of your helmet rather than getting stuck straight in. And so that's basically all. As for original Conqueror, that's the one thing I would change about him, is I would make it to where his helmet was more like the one I have on. But that's really all it. Alright guys, and then the character that I would call kind of the middle ground here between the knights that really don't seem to know what they're doing and the knights that do, we have the Centurion. Based off of a Roman soldier, we have a character with plate armor, as you can see, and plates overall in general, and that's one of the best things you could have in the medieval period is plate armor. Although it was kind of hard to place him, because I don't know whether or not whether this armor is iron like Romans or steel like the medieval period. However, I'm just assuming that it's steel just like all the other knights, so we're going to go ahead and call it steel. However, he does only seem to have a short broadsword there, and no shield. So definitely some mild problems there. No chainmail, no under armor for under his plates or anything. So some fairly obvious weak spots there. But he does have a pretty decent helmet. So yeah, the Centurion finds himself in a pretty decent spot, and like I said, just kind of sitting in between good and bad for the knights. So as I was saying about Centurion, he's got a Roman broadsword. He's another one of those that he obviously took a lot of inspiration from the Romans, and I guess he wanted to be like a Roman. But there are some things that, honestly, if I wanted to be like a Roman, I would look like a Roman, kind of like what he does, but then I would improve on some things. Things including chainmail under armor, or at least gambeson. Gambeson is a good it gives you plenty of maneuverability while also giving you plenty of slice protection. But overall, he's got a pretty good kit. I just wish that he had a shield, and maybe at least a javelin of some kind, maybe, something to give him some distance. Now, I know his fighting style really depends greatly on his ability to punch his opponents and really get in there and get nasty with them. But that kind of fighting style, especially if you're going up against some of the other characters that we've seen so far, like let's take, for example, Jian Jun or Valkyrie or Nobushi, they got really long weapons, and they're just going to they're just going to keep him at a distance. And even in game, he struggles greatly against people who keep him at a distance, and that just makes sense. He's got to get real close, and if somebody keeps him at a distance, then he's going to have real problems. But overall, he is really well set. I just wish that his weapon kit was a little better. Like I said, maybe some more distance and maybe a little bit more protection on his second hand there. But really, overall, pretty good. Could be better, but it could also be much worse. So let's move on to the next. Alright guys, and next we have the Warden. Just barely coming under our next character. I actually made this video one time and then I thought about it and decided to put Warden under the next character on the list. But starting with the Warden here, we see that she's actually fairly well armored. She's kind of the closest thing that we'll have to what one may call a traditional knight. We have just a regular curved helmet there, good armor on her arms, chainmail, and then in an interesting thing here, this is actually what kind of diminishes her under the next character on our list. While she has chainmail over almost her entire body with plates on her arms, she doesn't have any plate over her chest, which kind of diminishes her. She's got an interesting shield over her heart, which is definitely going to keep her protected, and then the rest is Brigandine. However, Brigandine and chainmail have the same weakness to thrusts, which is why she is where she is on the list. However, she does have a great sword, which is a really good weapon to have. It's got that distance. So she finds herself in a pretty decent position overall, with just a few minor holes. Alright guys, so the Warden. As I said, she's got a great sword. Despite the game saying that she's a master, or wardens in general are masters with a long sword, that is not a long sword at all. That is way too big to be a long sword. That is a great sword. And great swords are, obviously, as you can imagine, really good weapons. Really no complaints about her weapon. I don't really have a lot of complaints about Warden, period. She's really good overall. She's got a lot of chainmail, and where she doesn't have chainmail, she's got gambeson. Now, why would she wear gambeson instead of chainmail? Well, gambeson's a little cheaper, and it does offer a little bit more maneuverability in general. So overall, she is very good in her position. And then I called the chest piece Brigandine, but I don't really even know that you could call it that. It almost looks just a little bit like a odd conglomerate of whatever she could put on her chest, just any kind of protection. Brigandine, the metal plates would be a little closer, and it would be it would be nice to see those things a little closer, so that way she was a little bit more protected. But she does have gambeson under it, so it's really not that big a deal. And then, like I said, she's got a good helmet. Okay, the difference between her helmet and Conqueror's helmet, like I said, the rounded helmet is better at deflecting the shots, while a square top helmet is just going to kind of take the full impact and possibly get punctured. Her helmet will have less chance of that. So it's good to see that. Really not much more I could say about Warden, so really we just kind of got to move on to the next. So yeah, let's move on. Next, we have the Black Prior with a kite shield right out of the gate and a long sword. But that kite shield is definitely something to be praised. He's going to be very well protected. Basically, he's got a lot of ability to duck under that thing. And then if you kind of look closely, you'll see he's got chainmail under armor. And then the rest is, if you kind of look under his robe there, you have to look very closely, but you'll see there's plate armor under the robe. So he's got good stuff there. Good stuff all around for Black Prior here. The only thing that I can note is that we all know what I'm about to say next. No helmet. Ah man, I can't believe that he would do this to himself. He's got everything else going for him, and then he decides not to go with a helmet. I'm not sure why he would decide that, but no helmet, therefore kind of diminishing his placement, but still overall in a really decent spot for the Black Prior. He doesn't have a lot of distance, but he does have good protection. So Black Prior, in our number 3 slot, I believe. So interestingly, more research has taught me that the Blackbriar's kit is actually what you may, once again, consider to be more of a cavalry kit than an actual infantry kit. That's not to say, though, that this would be a bad kit for infantry. It would still be very good overall for his purposes. The only thing that I can honestly note on is that a kite shield is going to be it's going to be kind of heavy. It's going to wear you out a lot, but overall, not a bad kit. You know, I mean, he doesn't have a helmet, which is something that I am kind of disappointed to see. But at the very least, you know, his kite shield is really going to protect him. He can just kind of duck under it and put, you know, it's going to cover, you know, it covers most of his body. I'd say it covers at least 95% of whatever he's holding in front of. So he's going to be really well protected. Again, though, the only thing that I can really note is that a longsword is a good weapon, but it's also more of a secondary weapon. Honestly, I would have preferred to have seen Blackbriar have some kind of maybe a spear, a short spear of some kind, or maybe a poleaxe, a short poleaxe of some kind. Possibly even a hammer might be a little better than a longsword. But overall, Blackbriar is in no bad position. He's got generally good armor. So yeah, that's really all I can say about the Blackbriar. So let's move on to our number 2 slot. Alright guys, and for the number 2 knight, we have none other than, honestly, my favorite looking character in the game, and that is the Warmonger. Very well kitted overall, starting off with her great sword, and then next you can see she's got chainmail and plate basically everywhere else. It looks like she may have brigandine under her chest piece, and then she's got those little drapes, and while those at first glance may look like leather, I believe them to actually be what may be called studded leather. It's actually like plates of armor attached to that leather, attached to a leather like cloak, a drape like piece of gear. So her legs are actually covered, and then she's got some shin guards. The only weakness that I can really see in this build is right at her neck. That is a very dangerous spot to have. There doesn't seem to be any chainmail or brigandine covering her neck there, so she may be in a pretty bad position if somebody gets a good shot at her neck. However, she does have a decent helmet, so overall very good for the Warmonger here. So as I was saying about our gothic girl Warmonger here, she's got herself a great sword. I don't think I said that in the opening for her and her overview. So she's got herself a great sword, and she's got kind of a gothic looking kit, and make no mistake, the Goths actually made pretty decent armors. It was a lot more aesthetic than many of the other knights that we'll see on the list, but that does not mean anything bad. No, in fact, it is very good for her. Again, though, the only thing that I can note on is the lack of chainmail or even gambeson going up kind of in a hood under her helmet. That is the one thing I would improve, but overall she is very well armored, and honestly she's one of the 2 characters in this game, the next one being the number 1 character on the slot, who's gonna be next to impossible, or basically impossible to kill. Arrows will absolutely not penetrate her armor unless she was just super unlucky, like I said, and she got shot in the neck. So overall, Warmonger in a very good position for herself. Really, I other than, like I said, the gambeson helmet is really the only, or the gambeson hood is the only thing I would really change about her. And then, but like I said, you know, she really is in a position, you know, it's pretty apparent she doesn't want to die. She's got stuff everywhere, and I know that in the story she's supposed to be, you know, one of the most experienced people in the game, and honestly, it shows. Like I said, she's very well kitted. So yeah, let's move on to our number 1 slot. Alright guys, and without a doubt, the #1 slot in the entire game actually, and my personal favorite character, for the reasons I'm about to list, it is none other than the Lawbringer. Lawbringer here is just so well kitted. Honestly, in the medieval period, unless you were just like stupid lucky, you're basically not going to be, if you're in a 1v1 against this guy, you're not going to be able to kill him. Just straight out, you may as well just give up because you're not going to be able to kill this guy. He's got a poleaxe, which is one of the most versatile weapons of the medieval period. You can thrust with it, you can get a heavy shot with it, and you can break armor with the hammer. And then the rest of his armor, this guy just really, my friend and I were joking about it, he really does not want to die. He's got Brigandine, if you look closely, he's got Brigandine and Chainmail under his plate armor, which is a very uncommon thing to do, but he obviously does not want to die. He wants to stay in the land of the living, so he went ahead and did that. He's got a good curved helmet with a spike up at the top. We'll talk about why that is such an effective tactic here in just a moment. He's got broad shoulder armor to help absorb blows from things like hammers and maces. He's got good leg armor overall. Just a very, very few, very slim, very small weak points that we'll discuss here in just a moment, but definitely the #1 slot is our Lawbringer, and again, my favorite character. Alright guys, I really can't praise Lawbringer enough, but the one thing that I would change on Lawbringer here is going to be his legs. His legs could use just slightly better armor in the upper thigh area. He's got some good armor on the outside, but the inside could use slightly better armor. Like maybe just a couple of plates would really fix the problem. But really, I cannot praise him enough. His poleaxe is an absolutely fantastic weapon. For more reasons than you may originally assume. He's got the thrusting with the spearhead, then he's got an axe for heavy blows, and then for armor, he's got the hammer end. With the hammer, you could break your opponent's bones without necessarily having to penetrate their armor. And, you know, an opponent with a broken bone is basically a dead opponent. So like I said, you know, Lawbringer in a very good position, and then of course there's his helmet. Like I said, you know, the spike at the top is just going to be that much better for defending against, to just see that blows kind of get redirected off of his helmet. So really good stuff for the Lawbringer. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to, for today. There's our full Knights tier list. This one has taken me a little over a week to edit with work and everything, and you know, trying to get decent sleep as well as working my other jobs and so on and so forth. So overall, I hope you guys enjoyed. Do tell me in the comments where your character landed. Were they in a good spot? Were they in a bad spot? Tell me what you guys think. And if we could, guys, I'd like to see a like goal on this one. I'd like to set a like goal, I should say. Let's see if we can get this counter up to 20 likes. I know that's not very many, but it would be nice to see because it took me so long to do this one. This one seriously took me a long time, and it actually made me put off other projects that I would have liked to have worked on. And I've been putting this one off because of how long I knew it was going to take me, and it did end up taking me a long time. So, but that's really all I have for you guys today, so I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in another time and dimension, whenever or wherever that may be. Till then, peace out.